If you don't know the difference between a Drukari and a Skitari, but you love someone who does, then this video is for you. Welcome to Corner Case. You're in the hobby corner. I'm your host, your best friend, your Casanova Deck. Today, we're talking Wargaming Valentine's gifts for every budget. First things first, before we hop into gifts for every budget, what we are not covering today are specific models and paints, because those have a lot to do with personal preference and situation, depending on what army and what units within that army. That all plays into a factor if you want to get your partner a specific model or toy. So if that's what you want, this is the video for you. But if that's not on the table and you're trying to be thoughtful and buy something that improves their quality of life as a wargamer, then please go on ahead to the rest of the video. The first budget is $0. So I think we can all agree that adulting takes up way too much time. You have to do the groceries, you have chores, no matter what your situation is with your partner, giving them the gift of time as a wargamer is going to be much appreciated. Does your wargaming partner not have enough time to paint, or would they just like more time painting? Does your wargaming partner not get in enough games, or would they just like to get more games? No matter what, if you're living together, you're not living together, there's some way that you can give them the gift of time that they will appreciate. And I have to say that it doesn't have to be that you give them the gift that you play with them. I know some couples that do that, like on their birthday, then like they both play, where normally one of them wouldn't play. And that's a really, really nice gesture. But when it comes to Valentine's, sometimes for a wargamer, sometimes it might be anti-date night. That's the best date night, you know what I'm saying? You can package this as a simple IOU. Thank you in advance. Thank you. Love you too. The next budget we're talking about is under $30. I'm not giving you an expansive list here. These are only the gifts that I believe in that are not model gifts under $30. My number one gift, paint brushes. Depending on how intense your partner is, they may already have a preference for what brush that they like to use. But brushes don't last forever. They're a consumable item, and depending on how often your partner paints, then they eventually need to replace these brushes. So if it is the case that your partner already loves a particular type of brush, then you can just replace those brushes in advance. And I'm not one to pry into what's going on between two people, but you may not know this, and I'm not trying to out your partner right now, but sometimes these paintbrushes are like $30 for one. If that is the case, it makes a really great gift. Now, on the other hand, it may be the case that your partner is either newer to the hobby or doesn't have a specific preference within this sphere of paintbrushes yet. I know personally for me, for my hobby dollars, it is so hard to spend money on not models. Like, I want all my hobby dollars to go to the toys, so anything that goes into anything else is just so hard for me to fathom. In which case, I can recommend a nicer paintbrush. If they don't have them already, I think that they would really appreciate them. Personally, I have been using both Winsor & Newton Series 7 and the RS Opus series of brushes. I've been using the same brushes all year, probably have around 8 hours a week of paint time, using exclusively like 3 or 4 of these brushes only. And because I clean them, they've been lasting me the whole year. Now, the Winsor & Newton, I will say, like, it's getting a little tired. I do use it more often, but even still, like, I'm kind of on the edge where I don't need to replace it. So yeah, like $25 for a brush is gonna feel really steep, but believe me, it is so much better. I do have also a lot of mileage with Amazon sable brushes, and that's really the point here is, you can do more research with other videos that go over this, but there's synthetic brushes and sable brushes. Sable brushes tend to hold a tip a lot sharper. That's the main reason to use them, and they tend to last a longer time when you take care of them, and they can maintain that tip. Generally speaking, if you don't want to watch another video, then I can easily recommend to you either a Winsor & Newton or RS Opus series size 2. Look to see what your partner is painting. If they've got too many big models, get them like a size 4. If they paint a lot of Space Marines, like a size 4 is what I've been using. If they paint like a lot of small details, then maybe a size 0. But a size 2 is probably going to get used. And if you get it at your local game store or something, it'll probably be like pretty easy to return and exchange. That is my number one recommendation for under $30 budget. Oh, and you must also get the soap. I soap up my brushes like pretty much after every use, and that's how I've been able to extend the life. If they haven't been soaping their brushes, that's also a nice practice to help them buy nice instead of buying twice and elongate the life of their product. If you do want to do more research on paintbrushes and which ones to get, there's a ton of videos out there. Otherwise, the ones that I like are linked below. I can very confidently recommend those. But yeah, this is a really great gift. Honorable mentions: the Humble Wet Palette. I wouldn't normally recommend without discussing and communicating with your partner, just making a judgment call without research about their workflow. But if your partner is not on the wet palette, let me tell you, it is the easiest and I think cheapest way to just immediately upgrade your hobby. Basically, basically any techniques that you see online, these like layering, blending techniques, all these techniques you see online, these glazing, layering, and blending techniques are all made way easier with a wet palette. And once you go down that path, you end up mixing colors. And once you mix colors, you need to preserve those colors over time. Let's say even just overnight, a wet palette helps with that. Another thing is just that like some of these paint pots, like the Games Workshop ones, so easy to glob up just like too much paint onto your palette. And if you just put that on a plastic palette or like a piece of tin foil or something, it's gonna dry up like so fast, and then you basically just wasted paint. I know that it feels kind of a little bit more expensive to be painting on paper or to like have to buy these sponges, but really like over time, I think it makes your hobby better. And I would argue that, you know, it is or is not more expensive. It's 10 bucks on Amazon. If you're trying to just bunch a bunch of gifts together, honorable mention, under $30, for sure, the wet palette. If they're not on it already, they need to be easy peasy. Under $50 is pretty big budget, I would say. If you're not buying toys, my number one recommendation at the $50 price point is quality of life organization products. So number one for me is travel bags. So as you can see behind me, I'm on the Tupperware plan. I've got like a ton of Tupperware, but this stuff is not good to travel with. Everybody does the magnetic tray inside the Tupperware, hope it doesn't slide around, you know, but it's still not that good. Really the best solution, although it is clunky and super dorky looking, is the foam bags. So I was super averse to the foam bags for so long. Like they look super dorky. They've got like all the molly on there. So it makes me feel like I'm trying to be really masculine, even though it's like just my bag of toys. And then you got to have like the foams inside too. It seems really cumbersome, but actually the foam bags are clutch. I take them on the plane. I don't know about you guys, but my partner has to suffer with me taking my models to Hawaii and painting in the hotel room. And the foam bags let you do that. This is my Feldherr Mini. Depending on what game your partner plays, if they're playing 40K, maybe not at the $50 price point, but if they're playing literally any skirmish game, if they're playing Kill Team, Infinity, Malifaux, Warcry, almost any skirmish game, this size is enough. I think this was like 40 or 50 bucks on Amazon, link below, but super, super convenient in terms of just like, this is all your stuff and you don't have to worry about it. You can toss it, you know, it could get kicked or whatever, and it's quiet. You know, that's the other thing. The Tupperware, like the lids don't stay on that well because it's just a snap. So at least you know that like this is going to be zipped up. This is another thing that if your hobby dollars are specifically for toys, like for me, it's a little bit hard to spend your money this way. But once you do, you realize like, oh, this is way better than what I was doing. This right here is my big boy battle foam. As you can see, it's quite dusty because this is what I would take to the game store with me on tournament days back then. And due to the global pandemic, we're not really doing that anymore. So if your partner is more of a bigger scale war game like 40K, then they might need that scale of a bag, in which case it wouldn't be the $50 price point, but I wasn't going to just say this one again at the $100 price point part of the video. At the $50 price point, that's when your options for bags really start to open up. If your partner is a skirmish wargamer, then you can buy any number of bags that are good for their hobby. You can buy bags that are specific for their game. And if they play 40K, you know, you may want to get the slightly bigger one at a different price point. But bags, really, really good. Cannot recommend enough, although it did feel extremely dorky buying one, and carrying one doesn't look that good either. But, you know, take one on a plane with you a couple times, you know, go to Gen Con once in your life, and it's really good, even though it's kind of ugly. At the $100 price point, obviously that's where your doors really start to open up because $100, man, that's a lot of money. Obviously you could up the ante from any of the previous tiers. You could buy a bigger bag. For example, you could buy a full series of the nice brushes, but strictly $100. I think at this point, there's two options that I think are pretty good. So the first option, the safe option, you know, really don't know what's going on in your partner's setup. Easy to see, lights. It is so easy for me to just believe that probably most gamers out there don't have enough lights for their painting setup. And that's because my point of view on lights is the light of 1,000 suns is a requirement. I didn't have proper lights for the longest time. I would just like paint in the kitchen with like the kitchen lights, and those lights are super yellow and they're super like mood lights, so they'd be a little dark, and I would paint until late in the night, and in the morning I'd like look at them in like the fresh sun and it'd be like, what the fuck happened last night? It didn't look like I thought it was. Like I thought it was looking so good the night before in my darkness, and in the morning I was like, oh my goodness, it looks like a child drew this with a crayon. And it's easy to see if your partner has a good light setup at their desk because they're either there or they're not. I personally recommend these LED task lamp with the magnifier. These have worked pretty well for me, and this is one where I would even recommend getting two, and that's kind of what puts it in the under $100 category for me. Is the ones that I have are like $60, $40, so that just pushes them over 50. But for a while I only had one, and really you want two of them because basically you want lights coming in from multiple angles to avoid any like cast shadows. Otherwise, you know, the light can be kind of harsh. And on the other side of things too, like in addition to actually making you a better hobbyist because you can see what you're painting, your painting station looks like an absolute battle station with these things. The second idea that I had is if your partner is not already into airbrushing and is interested in doing so. Airbrushing is a whole setup. If they want to get into airbrushing, it's going to be like in total $400 because you have your airbrush, which is anywhere between 100 and 150 bucks. You have your compressor, which is anywhere from 50 to 200 bucks. If you only get those two things, like you could go, but the reality is like depending on your living situation, you want some quality of life. Personally, I can recommend the little tiny spray booth. Your lungs are totally worth it. Or if your partner does not have like a respirator, like that's also pretty good. But for the most part, you do want that spray booth. There was a time in my life where I did not have one and I was spraying in my bedroom, and let me tell you, that Lamenter's yellow is all over everything in places you would not expect many feet away from where I was spraying. You do kind of want like the spray booth to kind of manage all of that. It's less than $100 on Amazon. Sometimes it even comes with lights, link in the description, but I cannot recommend this enough if they're getting into airbrushing. I assume here that they will have more fun picking their own airbrush and picking their own compressor. You know, if you want to pitch into that, you know, that's a different idea too. Communicate with your partner. But in this scenario, if they're kind of doing that and you're just trying to plug in, then I think this is like the best quality of life thing that they're going to realize they want, or they're just going to stop airbrushing because it's inconvenient. So those were my suggestions for best gifts under 100, under 50, under 30, and $0 for your Valentine's Wargaming partner. Valentine, I think I'm speaking for all Wargaming partners out there with non-wargaming partners that if I were to get any of those things, I'd be pretty happy. And you know, the gift of time for $0, one night at the game store, 2 hours where you take care of the dog instead, any of those are super appreciated. The anti-date night. I hope you guys have a romantic, wargaming-filled Valentine's. And again, if you are the wargamer in question, feel free to link this to your partner discreetly or not discreetly, who knows? Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. We'll be here. Otherwise, thanks for stopping by. Please like and subscribe. We are always desperate. See you next time.
Venerate the Emperor by subscribing now. Only in death does subscribing end.